Everyone hear me? Welcome to our first Huddle virtual action meeting. Everyone here? Can everyone see us and hear? Okay, great. We're going to start off this evening with prayer from Minister Stephen Marshall, who's the co-liaison to Reverend Al Sharpton at the National Action Network and one of our speakers here tonight.
All right, good afternoon, everybody, or good evening. Let us pray. Father, first we thank you right now for a new day we did not deserve or we did anything to gain. But Father, today was a testament of your grace and mercy. Not only your grace and mercy, but Father, we thank you for keeping the old promise to look beyond our faults and supply our needs. And now, God, as we embark on this adventure, this endeavor, this conversation to inform and empower our people, Father, give us divine courage, give us divine strategy to make sure that what we're saying is impactful and quality for our folks during this time of crisis. Father, we ask you now to bless our leader and our founder, Reverend Al Sharpton, bless the founders of Huddle, and bless the leadership of this great institutional organization. Give us the courage to keep fighting, keep the action going. In Jesus' name we pray,
amen. Amen. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, I'm gonna let everyone else in. Sorry. All right, and let's begin. 7:02. For those of you who do not know what the National Action Network is, we are a leading civil rights organization founded by the Reverend Al Sharpton. We are in over 100. We have over 100 chapters in America, United States, and we are part of the NAN youth movement, the National Youth Movement under the National Network. We're an initiative in New York City and also in California. NAN Youth Move is in several chapters. Our National Youth Director is one of our speakers tonight, Ms. Mary Pat Hector. She's actually going to be our first speaker. She's in Atlanta. She's located in Atlanta, and where definitely COVID is impacting, but there's a lot going on right now in Atlanta, so we want to discuss that. We wanted to have this conversation tonight, not only because we huddle up for change, but because our leadership, our national leadership has been having webinars and has been having their own virtual town halls, of course, but we wanted to talk about how the coronavirus is impacting young people and young adults, from young people and young adults who are basically frontline workers or in the midst of service or in the midst of this virus that were greatly impacted. So we're gonna start tonight with Miss Mary Pat Hector. Mary, we're gonna let some more people in. I'm sorry, and for the technicals, I don't have really trying to get everybody in here. People keep joining, which is a great thing. All right, Mary, let me unmute you.
I'm mute now. I have to choose.
There we go.
How are you all? I want to give another congratulations to Malaysia Freeman on getting accepted into the Clark Atlanta University.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're welcome. But one of the things that I wanted to talk to you all about is how COVID-19 is impacting not only Georgians and young people in Georgia, but young people all across the country. Currently, the United States government recently passed the CARES Act, which gave over $7 billion to students and institutions of higher education and learning. Sadly, less than 1% of that funding has actually benefited students directly, which is extremely problematic because if you all looked at my Instagram, and some of you all have actually supported some of the initiatives where we were writing letters to congressmen and legislators asking them to pass the CARES Act and to include funding for students specifically. A lot of institutions have received millions of dollars re the CARES Act and young people's efforts regarding the CARES Act, but none of that funding has actually impacted students. A lot of students who found college to be a safe haven. I know myself, Ashley, and Bria talked a little bit about mental health. A lot of students saw college as a way to exit toxic environments and family environments, and now they're placed back into those environments. A lot of students relied on summer. I know every summer I had a job on campus to support like financial aid, to make extra money. Like students relied on their summer jobs or their jobs during the remainder of the year. They found ways to do summer school in order to stay on campus because they were homeless and didn't have any family to go to. And so when we ask ourselves, how is COVID impacting students? Students are homeless. now more than ever. They're hungry now more than ever. You know, we do a lot of work as regards to student hunger and food insecurity. Students are now hungry more than ever. And that is extremely problematic. And so we've done a lot of work and volunteered some of our time to what is called the Student Relief Fund, where over 5,000 students have reached out and, you know, asking for assistance and help. So every day, you know, we get up, we get on our computers, and we try to find them resources to best support them during this time. Another question that was asked is, what do you think youth advocates should be doing during this time to continue to serve despite the pandemic? And that's very, very difficult, because when you think about states like Texas and Georgia, where young people have been advocating the governors to keep the doors, some of them have been encouraging the governors to keep the doors closed. Some of them are out here getting tattoos and Lord knows what, which is sad. But, you know, how can we advocate for our governors to keep us safe? And that's very, very difficult, because before the pandemic, we would be able to take it to the streets. We would be able to protest. We would be able to rally. And now we have to really reevaluate what activism looks like during this time, which is very, very interesting, because, you know, we'll let her writing work, we'll sending emails work, we'll calling work. It doesn't seem like it's working. So, you know, how are we making a difference? I think one of the best things for us to do now is education, educating our peers on how they can keep others safe, the importance of staying at home, the importance of social distancing, because, you know, I still have cousins and relatives that are still going to parties, and we're still going to parties during this time. And, you know, it was up to me and my job to educate them on why they should be staying at home, why they should be social distancing, the importance of wearing masks and others. And then a final question was, how can we encourage young voters like yourself to vote during these fearful times? The cool thing is, you know, you have nothing else to do. If you're at home social distancing and in quarantine, you know, you literally have no excuse but to fill out your absentee ballot form and mail it back in to receive an absentee ballot. You have no excuse but to register to vote online. You can register to vote online. And you have no excuse to fill out the 2020 census. It's been very, very disheartening to see the lack of numbers of United States citizens, not even just African Americans, but just citizens in the United States, who just have not participated in the 2020 census. And we know that our communities are impacted most as regards to the need of the census funding. So, you know, I think that there's no excuse. Literally just go online, fill out your absentee ballot application. I know here in Georgia, you can even take a picture of the absentee ballot application and email it. Like, it's that simple. So there's literally no excuses anymore. We have to do this. When I think about the lives lost from COVID-19, I think about the fact that it's older Black people who are carrying this upcoming election on their backs that we've lost. And it's literally just heartbreaking to even fathom that those voters that we once relied on may not be there. And now it is up to us. And it's going to take us to just keep mobilizing and keep organizing and keep educating our peers to do what's good.
I have one more question for you, Mary.
Yes.
Mary Pat, what's going on right now in Georgia? Governor Kemp is basically opening specific businesses or allowing certain non-essential businesses to reopen. How are you guys on the ground telling young people to stay home or making them understand that this is still a serious issue?
So one of the main things that we've been trying to do here in Georgia is I often talk about the COVID-19, and I try not to speak on it from a stance of elitism. And I say that because a lot of us cannot afford to social distance. A lot of us can't afford to self-quarantine. Like, some of us do have to go to work, you know, like some of us have to work at Walmart. We have to be Instacart drivers, because what else can we do? We have to feed our families. So the biggest thing that we've been trying to do is get Governor Kemp to at least distribute testing. They keep saying that there's not enough tests to test citizens here. But the truth is, all of these celebrities who have little to no symptoms are receiving tests and flaunting them on Instagram. Meanwhile, people's grandmothers who are dying in senior citizen facilities that are begging. There's a senior citizen facility not too far from here. A month ago, they had 76 residents. They're now down to 30.
Wow.
The rest of their residents have passed away due to COVID-19. And this was told, and the governor was informed, and that's only one senior citizen facility. There are so many that are suing trying to sue the governor, trying to beg them to close the facilities, ask for testing. Black people are not getting testing. They're not getting tested. They tell us that they don't have enough tests. So we're demanding, if you're going to open up the state, like, give us tests, and also give us materials. Like, people who are essential workers, you know, these corporations, I'm not going to name any names, but these corporations that people are working at, and they're saying that they are taking care of us. You know, the National Action Network Atlanta office, we still get the phone calls to our cell phones. And there are workers who are telling us, you know, we have workers who have the virus, and, you know, our boss told them if they didn't come to work, they would be fired. Wow. We have workers who still come to work that have the virus, and they don't disinfect their stores every day. They don't give us hand sanitizer. They don't give us gloves. They don't give us masks. So our biggest thing is testing, and also providing working class people in the state of Georgia the materials that they need, because they have to go to work. They have to work at these restaurants. They have to work as hairstylists, to give them the materials that they need to be successful and to be safe. So give them masks, give them gloves, give them disinfecting materials. That's hard to find. You know, we can't even give them to our medical workers. So it's been very, very hard, but we're pushing through.
Thank you, Mary. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
I don't think so. And if I keep talking, I might say something crazy. So I'm going to get out while I'm ahead.
Okay. There might be some questions for you, so don't leave us yet. Okay. Next, we're going to hear from William Allen, who is a district leader in the epicenter of where this virus is in New York City. He's also our national crisis director at the National Action Network, so he's getting all the brunt of these calls. And he is having to delve out the resources or send them to where they can get resources. So I definitely felt like it was important to have his voice on this call to help lead us in the right direction and to provide resources for those on this call looking for more resources. We're welcoming William Allen. Welcome, brother.
Thank you, my sister. And let me just thank you and all the Huddle organizers for putting this together, making sure that young America has a role to play, and that role needs to be heard loudly. And particularly young leaders are also looking for direction from young people. You know, all across our country, we got young people in high school student governments and the college student governments and middle school honor society. These are all leaders in their own right, and they need to really be heard. And they have not been fully heard in the dialogue all across the country. So I'm hoping, Ashley, that you have now lit the flame for young people who can be heard and address some of the things that's happening around this virus. As the National Crisis Director of the National Action Network, you would think that my job was already a full one before coronavirus, but guess what it was? And now it has tenfold increase with the amount of people that's reaching out for all kind of issues associated with this virus. And it's a very scary thing. People losing their jobs, they're losing their homes. They're concerned about their loved ones who are incarcerated. It's a very trying time, and people are looking for solutions. And I think that when they call National Action Network, they at least are tapping into an organization that's on the ground and that can provide direction. So one of the things I've done differently since I've been working between home and sequestering myself in the conference room at our national headquarters in Harlem is using all the technology that's now currently out there, just like the one we're on tonight with Zoom. I've now implemented Zoom and other kind of technology to reach out to those who need crisis assistance. So we have even changed how we handle phone calls. Now, all the calls that come into National Action Network Crisis Center are put into a real-time document that I can see at any point, anywhere. And then chapter leaders that also want to be plugged into that they can be plugged in too. So therefore we can immediately contact people and follow up with them. In the beginning, some of the calls that we were getting, people just was not aware of how serious this disease was, and they were still talking about some other stuff. But now the majority of the calls are centered around coronavirus, COVID-19. And we're giving people guidance on that issue. You asked, how is this virus impacting our community in particular? Black people largely and brown people. Well, the numbers, if you just turn on any channel today or Google it, the numbers are outstanding. You know, here in New York City, you got Black folks on the 30 percentile, and you got Hispanics pushing 40% of the positive cases. Here in Harlem alone, we're now up to 1,500 plus positive cases in Harlem. And so, you know, young people they can be the leaders of this. You know, this is not the time to have coronavirus parties. This is not the time to say that we now have a break from school or we have a break from our part-time job. We can go chill with our friends, because at this moment while we're chilling and partying, our grandparents and our elders are dying or are dead.
Talk about it.
That's the reality of that. And we need to make sure as the young generation, you guys need to make sure that you're reaching out to your elders and getting that wisdom, because I got to tell you, with this disease, this virus, this is an attack on our wisdom. And if our wisdom is gone, how do we move into the future? You know, nothing that we do today, believe it or not, is new. Every generation was once young, and every generation that's young get their wisdom for those who are ahead of them. You know, like your father, Reverend Sharpton, got he was tutored by Reverend Jackson. He learned from Dr. King, and others associate with Dr. King. Every generation has to tap into the generation ahead of them. And so we got to make sure that we're working together in lockstep to address this real crisis. And then guess what? This crisis that's taking place worldwide in America, in our community, nothing's ever happened like this. And I think some of us, and particularly young people, are probably shell-shocked by it.
Right.
You know, but I think there are solutions out there by which young people can participate in the leadership around this issue. Like I said already, you got student governments inside of these high schools and these colleges. I want to hear from them. I want to hear from those young people that's in leadership role in middle school. Let's give these young leaders that's in leadership role a platform to be heard, and give them the necessary resources so they can reach out to their peers. Right. Young people don't want to hear from old guys like me. They need to hear from each other and really make a serious effort. Now, I live in Harlem, and I got to tell you, I walk, you know, up and down the street sometimes safely, and I don't see a lot of young people wearing masks or gloves. Right. And so I'm repeating stuff over and over. Hey, are you okay? They said, yeah. I said, where's your mask? So I don't know. I think if more young people speak up about this, I think other young people will see how serious this is.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to provide as far as resources we should be demanding?
Yes.
Do you have a seat at the table?
Yes. If you are a young leader and you need some guidance and some mentoring, please contact us. We will give you some guidance. We will show you where the resources are to be an effective young leader. We want to give you support. We want to support you in your platform. For example, if you're in New York City, City University of New York, I want to hear from the University Student Senate. If you are in student government and you're not in your college fund schools, those student governments, I want to hear from you. We want to hear from you as an organization. We want to know what you're doing and how we can support it. So our number is 877-626-4651. That's 877-626-4651. And of course, our website is nationalactionnetwork.net. Let us hear from you. Let us help you. Please, your leadership is needed more so now than ever.
William, there was a question. They want you to share some of the resources for therapy right now, or if a young person is depressed.
So in cities all across the country, New York has kind of started the lead. New York created 888 NYC Well. So if you was to call 888 NYC Well, WELL, not only will it connect you to mental health resources for New York City, but that same number will connect you to mental health resources all across the country. They have created a national network system to address mental health. That's 888 NYC Well, mental health resources.
Thank you. And I shared everything that he shared in the chat if anyone needs it for references. There was a question from Pinnacle for you, Mary Pat. What ways are the HBCUs helping their students in time of need, and what things are you doing to help improve your area from spreading coronavirus? That was from Pinnacle, one of our Huddle VP, actually.
So sadly, like many schools, HBCUs have received funding. I know at Spelman, students were very, very critical of the administration and were huge advocates for themselves. And Spelman announced that they would be doing paid online internship opportunities for the students with the funding that they did receive. But we're encouraging students of these institutions, and specifically alum, to reach back out to their schools and ask them, you know, what are you all doing with your CARES Act funding, and how are you supporting students? Because again, less than 1% of the funding has actually benefited students directly. So, you know, HBCUs are not excluded from what's happening as regards to not supporting students. Sorry, you all, someone literally keeps calling me. I'm not sure if I hung up. And then what was the second part of the question, Ashley?
He said, how are you helping to prevent coronavirus from spreading in your community?
I am staying in the house. I know my hair looks laid, but child, has been like this for about, 2 months now. I'm staying in the house. I'm not going outside. And I'm also trying to distribute and help make masks and get other people to distribute those masks to communities where people are not getting access to these specific materials.
You're muted, Ashley.
I'm muted, sorry. Now we're gonna go to Ms. Dominique Sharpton, our National Membership Director, and she's also the Vice Chair of the NAN Youth Huddle. She's on the ground in Miami currently, and I wanted her to share how she's being impacted by the coronavirus and what you're doing about it in your community.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Ashley, for the introduction, and thank you all for joining us. This is really impactful and inspiring already, so I'm so glad that we had this convening, and young people definitely need to understand and know that their voice is certainly important. My situation is a little crazy right now. I have a 16-month-old boy who, as Ashley mentioned, we are now in Florida. We came down to Florida on March the 16th, and we've been here, really trying. My thing was to try to stay in the safest place possible because I was unaware of the resources and of how bad actually New York City was, and having a baby in that, during this pandemic is really difficult because there are not a lot of resources out there telling you about, babies and keeping babies safe. We know that there hasn't been many deaths or cases reported as it relates to young people. So it could just be that there aren't any cases that have been reported or no babies that haven't been tested positive for them to do extensive research on the situation. So that scares me even more. So my thing was to hunker down and to be somewhere where I felt was the safest situation for my child. Also, he was enrolled in nursery school, and my job is very demanding, as a lot of you know, and I'm also a student. I'm pursuing another degree, so I'm also a student taking online classes in college, and it's a lot. It's a lot of work, and it requires a lot of time. And so with Marcus Al now being and needing my undivided attention 24/7, at times I don't know and I don't feel supported. I don't feel like I have the easy Google go-to. I don't feel like I have the access where I know in New York, there are different laws and programs and stuff where they really access, online programs for children, but that starts at pre-K. My child is younger than a pre-K age. So what are the programs? What are the online tools, accessible for me to teach him and to help his development to further? So I've been finding myself at moments very frustrated, not knowing where to turn, not knowing what to do, and not knowing if what I'm doing is enough, and so I've been challenged in that capacity, education-wise, for, my child's needs. But also on the other end, I found a way, to plug that energy into service. And I have been helping the efforts down here in Miami with Operation Feed Miami. We've been giving away food. As most of you know, in New York, the situation started at the House of Justice. And every day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday here in Miami, we do Operation Feed Miami out of New Birth Baptist Church, where we've been giving over 1,500 free meals to those in need in the community in Miami. And we're not only giving away food, but they're also, providing information on the census and information on services in the community where people can go and get help, or just, to have an extensive arm of support that people need in this time. And I've been seeing that the need is definitely there. You never know exactly what impact you're making, or you never know what people need until you start to really give the service. And so we didn't think, we started off with just asking for 500 meals and then had to go back and get more and more and more and more. And now we're up to 1,500 because we see that the need is actually there. We see that people, really appreciate the services. They need the services. There are challenges with grocery shopping, and there are challenges with online shopping, not being able to get your goods that you order online in a timely manner. So there are issues that are across the board, and not necessarily in underprivileged communities, but all across the board. We are noticing that the middle class is now decreasing more and more every day, and people are really starting to experience hardships, and that's a problem. So I know that I've had some issues, of course, being a mom, but also having to see and having to deal with the service component of seeing the need that people really do need services right at this time. So I'm glad that National Action Network have, of course, stepped up to the challenge and have been responding to the call for action, and just, being there to help someone else is definitely powerful and definitely impactful, and it's been helping to, ease my attention and ease my insecurities and ease my, my issues now as well. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Also, I just wanted, you mentioned before, well, I'm not here, but we were talking before about your dreams to be an actress. A lot of people have dreams right now that are on hold because you can't get outside. So how can you pursue your dreams in this limited capacity? How can you use this time to go after whatever you want to go do, even though you're inside?
I was just having that conversation the other day. I don't know if it was with you or with someone else, but it's definitely a challenge. I mean, now we have to really hone in on our technical skills, which I don't feel like I really have that well. So it could be, learning a new trade, learning how to, live virtually, learning how to, develop apps and develop online gatherings and develop, different, tech spaces, because gathering and other creative spaces that we once depended on for entertainment or for, fulfilling our purpose and passions are going to be, no longer available. And so how do you pivot, not your purpose, because we understand that your purpose is, your passion, and your passion is service. And they all are connected, intermittently, but how can you then pivot and say, okay, now I need to pay for these tech classes, or now I need to, so it's definitely a mind eye opener for especially creative artists to have to now figure out how to be creative or how to thrive in this new space and this new reality that we now live in.
Thank you, Dominique. I want to skip, next is Reverend Stephen Marshall, but I want to go to Talik McMillan because he is our tech savvy. He's our tech policy advisor of the National Action Network. And you were just speaking, Dominique, about the tech space. So I want to bring you in, Talik. He is a man of many hats and many talents, and he can speak to a bunch of things. But I'm going to open the floor to you and let you talk to us about your experience.
Well, yeah, first and foremost, I want to thank you for your leadership and all that you're doing. And all who are on the call. I think it speaks volume that each of you took the time out of your day to come here and just learn and to hear what everyone has to say. You are leaders in your own right, and thank you for being here. As she said, my name is Talik. I am a policy advisor. I focus on tech and telecom out of the Washington, D.C. Bureau. Shout out to Kyra, who's on the phone as well, and our D.C. Bureau Chief Ebony, who leads us. But yes, just in the tech space, I think it's very important when we look at so much from disinformation and all that comes into play. So I would definitely encourage folks, like during this time is the time to look at trusted sources and trusted information. A lot of times I think being youth, like we're always on Instagram, we're always on social media, and we always see the negative that comes out of the situation. But I really believe that this is a time, as Mary Pat said, is a time to educate ourselves, to learn more, to do more with the ability and the things that we have at our hand and our disposal. And I think during this time, I think Mary Pat touched on it a little bit, was the fact that activism is different in the way that we see it. We can't be out in the streets. I mean, of course, we see some of them folks who are out there saying it and doing what they believe they're doing it, but we have to do it the right way. And if that means adjusting it, and if that means calling your representative, blowing up their phone, if that means sending 1,001 emails, if that means blasting them on social media and calling them out for what you believe is right, then that's what we have to do until we get back to that space where we can, get back on the ground and show up and be in their face. So I think a lot of times that has changed around, and I think that we have to refocus our attention on how we can get our message across and let it be heard. So I think this is definitely a time for, I think young people who are always on social media. This is our time. I feel like this is our time for you to get active. This is your time to get involved and galvanize other young people. You can, when it comes down to social media, being able to teach folks what it means to run a digital ad on social media, what it means to create a flyer, what it means to do targeted on Instagram and targeting audience and stuff like that. I think this is definitely our time to show our skills, to show what we're made of, to show in our age. Like, this is us. But I think it is also a time, like as Mary Pat said, to educate ourselves in how we move forward in fighting the coronavirus.
You're muted, Ash.
Patricia, you had a question. Your hand is up, I see.
Yeah, I had a question for Dominique.
Go ahead.
My question to her is she was talking about being a young mother and motherhood. What does she say to young mothers who are probably, Marcus Howell is not in school as of yet, per se, where the school year was been canceled. But what does she say to encourage young mothers like her who is trying to make it day by day? Like, what is her go-to to get strength every day? And, so it could be some young mothers on this call that she can encourage as to what she does. But when she does feel frustrated, like she said, Marcus Howell was in nursery school and he's not there anymore. But what does she tell mothers like her to encourage them in this time when you don't even know when it's going to end?
Thank you. Dominique?
And I need the encouragement myself. No, but I haven't. I mean, the thing is, I just thank God for my NAN family, my sister, my mama, Marcus, my husband, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law. I mean, we all had to come together and we just do it. We figure it out. You pick up a book, you read, you try to just, relate all of the fundamentals and the core values that you were instilled and that were instilled in you, and you try to pass that on, because that's the best you can do. I try to stay off of Google. I noticed that, there are a lot of negative reports and a lot of fake news that are out there that can steer you in the wrong direction, and you don't want to do that. So I have been tapping into, there's a Peanut app, and there are other communities, virtual communities that are out there for mothers to discuss, these situations with other mothers, because that seems to be the best option, is to talk about it, and to let it out, and don't take the frustrations out on the child, because it's not the child's fault, but to take the frustration, to talk about it and to let it out, and to find outlets where you can express yourself, and to hopefully get some keen advice as to how you can keep going.
Thank you. Hope that answers your question. There's another question from our VP Pinnacle. This question is to all of the panelists. How do you feel towards the people saying that Black people cannot get coronavirus when there's data showing that we are getting hit the hardest? Anyone want to take that question? Marcus House here. Anyone? Any of the speakers? James Johnson is not a speaker, but you want to take it? All right, let's go.
I'm 29 years old. I actually tested positive for virus.
Wow.
But I'll probably.
We can't hear you.
I put out probably 8 months ago about the effects. I got tested March 27th.
Wow.
And I still have. So I just got a check today. I've lost some pounds.
We can't hear you, James. I don't know if it's the speaker.
You hear me now?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yep.
I said I did a chest X today. I've lost some pounds. I live right in Queens. I live in Heights. I know the first thing that happened was when Durant got it, they said, "Yo, they paid Kevin Durant," and so I want my story out because I'm a Durant, and I'm a neighbor, and I'm just everybody else. But I think it's really dangerous to say that they can't get it, especially for us young say that we can get. And like a lot of different narratives to put out there. I think Waka Flocka put something out there before that we can't get it. There's a few people that say something like that, but honestly speaking, you see the AB parties, see the Sabato, and they go to somebody's house and play a spade Uno tournaments, and once it's getting, I have asthma as well. So once in your chest, it's a whole different game, and dying from being in your chest, and that it has nothing to do. People, I mean, you really don't, right? And the fact I don't know, it's like a DM or inbox saying, "Hey, you threw the worst part." Hey, bro, the worst part is when it's in your chest. So the people who think the part is when you sweat. That's just sweating, and then I want to lose weight anyway, right? So I'll take that. So I'll take it for any day before this thing in the chest, because breathe. I take a nebulizer. I've had an asthma attack in well over years, and I had to go get a nebulizer. I tested positive. Say go get a retest because I don't have the full symptoms. I sent a smell, had headache, and like I said, the tightness of my chest. And more important, I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I want to let people know. I work for, I'm New York City Comptroller, so I'm the Southeast Queens, and it's hard for me to leave right now, but it's hard for me to find a nest, because once you had it, okay, cool. How do I not have it? How do I not have it? Doctor says when symptoms is gone, it's gone at 1 month, gone at 7 minutes, I'm cleared. But it's a whole game. I really hearing different stories. Doctors don't have an answer. They just stay in the house. I can tell people. Anybody saying you get it, I'm seriously, you just have reevaluate. And I put my story out. Bria invited me today, so I'm out. And
Are you in quarantine?
yeah,
Okay.
I've been in the house since March 6th.
Wow.
I
Wow.
haven't seen anybody. You know, my drops off food. My frat brothers will drop off food. It's so you go in the house, but it's that narrative like that, like you know, still see people on the great wow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you really see partying. It's great, and I think it's a game. It first came out. I don't like to say the game. When it came out, they affected the elders.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If ITO that's coming home from Benedict in Columbia, South Carolina, and I know the liquor store is still open, I'm gonna go to, right? These queens, well, millennials don't know. Some of us stay there, some of us stay with our parents. So if you it on the elders is not affecting me, I'm up. Right? So that whole narrative that was put out, 40 days is virus, so now we're young people blood clots. It's a whole, it's a real, the thing that the media, I really blame you of what was really being put out. Now you're asking the college kids that are forced to come back, you know, home to stay in the house, but they really don't know what's going on. You know, so it's a whole, you know.
Well, first of all, thank you for your voice and being honest and transparent about what's going on right now, because on the news, you don't really see a lot of success cases. You just hear negativity. You don't see people our age, Black young people like you. So thank you for your voice. And I'm glad that you are doing okay and getting through this. And you have our support. I definitely want to include you for next Monday, as far as Kyra as well. And I already asked Ebony. But I wanted to thank you again, brother, sincerely. But going into this, I wanted to talk to Stephen. Reverend Stephen Marshall is our co-liaison in New York City, and he has been greatly impacted by the coronavirus, but he also works in the hospitals. So he's not only on the front line in social justice, but he's also in the medical field right now. And he just had a child yesterday, my niece. No, not yesterday, 2 days ago, sorry. Princess Justice Ruby Marshall. So I want to hear from you, Brother Stephen, and I want you to talk about, if you don't mind, talk about it all and how it's impacting you and what you're doing on the front lines. He's also one of the minds behind our Operation Feed Everywhere across the nation with WC Kitchen, World Central Kitchen. So I want you to talk about those efforts as well. Let's welcome Brother Stephen Marshall.
Thank you, everybody that spoke before me, and thank you to Ashley and those who are in leadership in the NAN Youth Huddle for letting myself, Dr. Bright, and William Allen, the old people on the line, hang out with the young folks today. I want to really just dive deep into the real dynamics in our community. And so, as Ashley said, I've been deeply impacted, lost my father to the virus. My brother was infected, thank God he recovered. But this is a moment of exposure, in my opinion. This is a moment of exposure for urban America where we see that our communities under the microscope have been underserved in every capacity, whether you're talking about food deserts and or healthcare. And so this is a moment of exposure simply because, again, we are not the majority of the population in this country, yet we are the most affected and the most critically ill and the most that are dying from the virus. And I want to touch on also what the brother said before me. We thank God for your recovery. About the stigma or the misinformation about young people getting it. First of all, 45% of young people from the age of 17 to 25 don't have health insurance. And so if you don't have health insurance, you don't know your pre-existing conditions. And so if you don't know your pre-existing conditions, you're walking around asymptomatic because your metabolism and your activity base is higher than the normal 50 or 60-year-old, unless you're Reverend Al Sharpton, because he's outworking all of us. But to say that is totally ignorant because, again, you have kids that are 19, 20 years old walking around with hypertension, diabetes, and the like thereof, and they don't have the symptoms, but they're asymptomatic. And a large percentage of, in New York City, young people live with grandparents. Those grandparents live in housing developments such as NYCHA, which is the New York City Housing Authority. We're walking and running around outside, coming back, and we're infecting Big Mama, right? We're infecting grandmother, grandfather. So it ties into the economic disparity because for the most part, those grandmothers or grandparents who are fostering, children that may have, that may live with them, when your grandmother passes away, it's more than likely that you're not on that lease.
Mm.
So the homelessness that we're going to see after all of our elders and seniors that have passed away, that are connected to their children or grandchildren that live with them in night-shift developments or public housing, we're going to see an influx of homelessness. Again, a moment of exposure. I lost my father on March 26th to the virus. I want to be vivid and candid with those on the line because even though I lost him, there's victory behind this story. And so I went to his house after 2 days of him complaining about some of the symptoms that we heard of related to the virus. When I saw him in his house, he was shaking in a pool of sweat. He couldn't walk. And so I knew that wasn't that's not his thing. My father was very active, world traveler. He just flew in for my baby shower 2 weeks prior. And so when I saw him in that state, I first, a man of faith, began to pray. And so I felt peace knowing that whatever God decided to do with him was his destiny, was his fate. And so it literally took 2 to 3 days for me to process that he was in the hospital. And 2 days after that, the Lord took him. And so again, I've been impacted more so than not just working in healthcare, but it hit home for me. And again, my brother was also, he was also infected. And so, with that being said, the exposure in New York, right? What do we see on the streets? You don't even know now if you're looking at a truck making a delivery to a grocery store or you're looking at a temporary mortuary.
Mm.
That's the climate in New York. If you walk down any street that has a public hospital or a private hospital associated with it, you will see trucks, refrigerated trucks that have become mortuaries. The conversation about making public parks and public spaces temporary graveyards. What are our children supposed to do and this is associated with those who want to open up government. The mental health part of it, right? We have 1.1 million children in New York City school system. How do we now tell them it's okay to walk past a park in which they used to go to, where we now have makeshift graves? And so the dynamics for us, Black America, is I would say 20 times harder to cope with than the rest of the world. And so I would encourage people and to be 100% accountable for our people. If we walk in Harlem in 1 hour, you will see those clusters on the corners as if nothing's going on.
Right.
Right. And I'm not saying that to shed light on people that are being ignorant, because that's what it exactly is. Most of our people are not informed. If we're last in healthcare, if we're last in unemployment, we're definitely last in getting information. Right. So when the coronavirus hit, people were making jokes about it because we are not informed. Simply, we're not informed. We still have people on the steps in Brooklyn smoking hookah. Right. We still have people passing unidentified, substances and rolled up in something. Right. We still have those who are drinking alcohol on the street or having barbecues, and it's like it's okay.
Right.
Simply because we're not informed. And until it hits home, until you see that T-shirt or that Facebook post, I can't believe my grandmother's gone. What did you do to associate to that? And so I think it's very important that we really talk straight about our self-accountability, only because and simply because our current health disproportionate, we are at the bottom as far. We're unhealthy already. We don't have any holistic food markets in our neighborhood. And if we do, it's not for us, it's priced out of our range. And so economically, we have really been hit by this. And like Mary Pat said from the beginning, how do you tell somebody that work in the service industry, right, such as a supermarket or Uber Eats or whatever, that you can social distance when you don't have an option? How do you tell somebody that lives in New York City that the median population in a one-bedroom apartment is 1 to 3 people? How do you social distance when you're living on a couch And most single mothers are either living in underserved developments or they're living in the shelter system, which is a whole nother issue. And so how did all of this happen, and I turned all of this trauma and pain from the loss of my father and other family members that were affected. My uncle passed away 2 weeks after my dad. And so I was able to cope with this by using what we believe at National Action Network is service is power. And so as Ashley talked about our launching partnership with the World Central Kitchen, myself, Katrina Jefferson, which is my co-laborer, we really, and Attorney Michael Hardy as well, who was our Vice President and General Counsel, we talked about how do we service folks and jump into the action as NAN always does. This is not the first time we've done this. Hurricane Katrina, whether it be the earthquakes in Haiti, we were always the first responders, so to speak. And so we fostered this relationship with World Central Kitchen. Right now, out of Harlem, we're giving out 18,000 meals a week. And so Reverend Sharpton attested to the fact that this is serious for our people. Nobody stands on a line 200 or 300 people at a time because they don't need the resources, they don't need the services. And so we've been blessed with this partnership and launch it around the country, and so that people can get from our organization what we need. There's an old saying that we all we got, and so literally we've been giving out food, we've been giving out masks, we've been giving out other supplies to help aid our folks. And I'm happy that we're going to be launching 2 other locations in the next couple of weeks to really hone in, especially in the South Bronx, New York, which is probably the #1 city in New York City or borough, in the country, where people are poor. The median income is $19,000 per family. It's predominantly Hispanic. We know that they have larger families, just like Black people. And so how do you survive for $18,000? Normally one person working in the house, and in the food deserts, there's McDonald's and chicken places every 5 feet. There's no community gardens. There's no real holistic, nutritious benefit living in those communities. And so I'm happy that Monday we will be starting in the Bronx. But again, I would just encourage people. I know I'm over my time. I'm a preacher, so you got to forgive me. But I want to talk about faith a little bit, right? And so the reason why Black people, for the most part, can cope even in the midst of death and calamity around us, we've always been challenged to deal with these situations, even from 400 years ago in the bows of ships coming to this country. And it's only been our faith that has sustained us. Most people that go through tragedies, they will react different than people of faith, simply because we're rooted and grounded in that which we believe. And so, I mean, more so than ever, I've even noticed people on social media reference God that you would never think would do so. And so we believe that, the Lord, He promised that every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. And those of us that are believers know that this is all a part of His divine plan. Although we may lose people, we may lose loved ones, we may lose even our sanity, but we trust and believe that if God brings us to it, He'll bring us to it.
Amen. I want to hear something from Tyleek. He's also a minister while we're on the topic of faith. Come on, Reverend Tyleek.
Look, as you see, National Action Network was full of preachers.
Yes.
So I'm gonna try not to be long as well. But as he was saying, like that, I feel like that's a really good, as you were going there. I find out like a lot of people come to me and ask me like encouragement or like what can I tell them. And as you were saying, like being faith, I think really in the Black community is like really strong, and I feel like that's something that we put a lot of weight off our faith because that's what we believe that we'll get through it. And a lot of things that I tell my peers, I think during this time, gratitude should be our attitude. And the reason that I say that is I feel a lot of times in situations we don't try to find the gratitude in the midst of an issue or in the midst of problems that we find ourselves going through in life. So the way that I encourage myself in getting up and getting through the next day is I try to put gratitude to be my attitude in the midst of it. I'm reminded by my favorite scripture, 1 Peter 4:13, it says, "Beloved, think of not strange concerning the fiery trials that are to try you, but it says to rejoice in as much as you are the partakers in the suffering of Christ Jesus." So my mindset is, in the midst of me going through what I feel is a bad time, I can still rejoice in the fact that I'm still waking up and having breath in my body. And in the midst of me being upset that I'm looking at the same people every single day in my household and working from home and not moving, I can still rejoice in the fact that I have a job and a source of income. So even in the midst of it, I say to you, find the gratitude in it. There's someone that is begging God in their hospital bed on their last breath, begging God for the opportunity that we have to say that we're in our homes, bored with nothing to do. Find gratitude in the situation. You are blessed, and allow your faith to carry you. Faith of a mustard seed. It takes faith of a mustard seed to move a mountain. It takes your faith of a mustard seed to get you through any and everything that life has to throw at you. So that's what I have to say.
Amen. Thank you for that. I see a bunch of questions, but I just want to get our last three speakers in. So I'm going to go to Miss Bria Gray. She is one of the reasons why we started this virtual town hall, and she's one of the reasons why we're doing a lot of what's about to come up in this year. Ms. Bria is she is a NAN staffer, but she is also a graduate from what school, Bria?
Albany University.
Albany University, and she's also part of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. She is about to study law. We need more lawyers in this field, especially. But she has a bunch of great ideas, and she was the first person who brought the issue of teen depression during this time. There was a young lady she brought to my attention who committed suicide because of coronavirus in California. And no one was talking about this. I still haven't seen it on the news, honestly. So I wanted Bria to talk about why she feels teen depression is so important and why this issue alone is important to her amongst coronavirus. Come on, Bria.
Hey, Ashley, wow. First of all, I want to say thank you to you and NAN Youth Huddle. NAN, I'm new to the organization, but I'm a NAN baby. So one of my leading concerns amid the pandemic is pretty much just mental health in our urban communities and our young adults and the youth. So you mentioned Joviana Smith. She was a 15-year-old. She committed suicide April 2nd. Her mother found her, and she said that she showed no signs of depression or anxiety or unhappiness during the pandemic. And her mother is really urging that families really take the time to have open communication and dialogue with youth during this time, even if they're smiling. Like, she described her as a bubbly personality. She was on social media, Instagram, TikTok, pretty much prevalent right now. And so just having that open dialogue and communicating, allowing your youth and your kids to have a voice, even if you don't agree with what they're saying. Depression is a big thing in our community, and we don't talk too much about it. So it's pretty much taboo. And before I learned of the story, in 2017, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services stated that suicide was the second leading cause of death in Black African Americans from the ages of 15 to 24. So Joviani was 15 years old. And we also see that females from the grades of 9 through 12 are 70% more likely to attempt suicide than their white counterparts, which was also reported. So now 3 years later, we're in 2020, we're in this pandemic, we're gonna see those numbers increase. I can expect that this will exacerbate mental health in our community, which is really frightening. So I think we have to hold each other closer and really just focus on our healing in this time and try to do more things to be active in our community, but from home, more so like coping and eating healthy. Some things that I've been doing to try to cope during the pandemic is eating healthy, reading. There's meditation apps like Calm, Headspace. I've been using the Nike training app, which is really helpful when you're working out from home. I've also had a chance to talk to my younger cousins and god sisters. My cousin is 16 years old, and she's been in the house complaining about the transition from learning in a school setting to now learning online, and how that's been frustrating and adding another layer of confusion, I guess, for some students, because professors are either responding too slowly to emails, or she just needs that visual learning experience. So just kind of helping them navigate that and having supportive family and friends around that you can call and talk to and just really try to get an understanding of what they're feeling. So that's something that I really wanted to stress. James, he joined the call before I could share his story. When I last spoke to him, he was having some trouble breathing. So I actually wanted him to be on the panel, and unfortunately, but we're glad that you came, James. So we're glad to see you doing well. And he's been telling his story in the community, and that also really just sparked my attention to what has been going on in our youth, in our community, and how we could stay vigilant and really just do better from home, teaching the kids to kind of just do things differently while they're home and just adapt to the new environment. Wearing gloves if you absolutely have to leave the house, wearing a mask if you have to leave the house, spending more time on the phone, talking to your friends, maybe calling family members that you haven't spoken to in a while. Some sources that I looked up that are available to us are on nyc.gov. You can go on the website, and there's a location avatar that helps you find where there's free food grab and go meals, and it'll show you which district or what school that you can go to pick up meals. Has operational hours. You don't need any ID. You can just show up and grab a free meal. We talked about what Reverend Al Sharpton is doing at the House of Justice, free distribution meals that we spoke of earlier. The United Nations website, unitednations.org, is also showing locations for free testing for COVID. So you can go on that website and look up different locations where you can get tested. They talk about drive-through testing sites. You have some home sites where you can get a test mailed to you. So there's a few resources for us to really just utilize and share with our connections. So that's what I wanted to talk about today.
Thank you so much, Bria. And salute to all the Divine Nine. I saw as soon as you started talking, the chat, everybody started shouting out their fraternities and sororities. So salute to everyone here. Yes.
Ashley, I'm sorry, before I guess the next speaker, I just wanted to know if we could do a moment of silence for Joviani Smith. I wanted to do that earlier, but I didn't get to mention it. So can we just bow our heads for a few seconds for Joviani? Okay.
Thank you, Bria.
You're welcome.
That's powerful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Whew. Next, we will hear from our youngest speaker, who is the president of our Huddle, Malaysia Freeman. Malaysia, I'm going to unmute you. As Mary Pat said, she was just accepted to Clark Atlanta. She's a senior. She won't be able to graduate physically this year, but she's on the front line still doing what she has to do. And I'm going to let her share her story and how she's been impacted by the coronavirus and how her community is and what she's doing about it. And basically how we can help advocate for young people in New York City. Malaysia Freeman.
Hello, everyone, and thank you once again, Ashley, and everyone for the congratulations. The first part that I wanted to talk about is being in high school during like this pandemic and how it's affecting everyone. I know myself personally, at first, it didn't really hit me when they said like school was closed down, and it didn't really hit me like when they said, oh, we wouldn't be going back to school. But eventually, as time went on, when I realized like I couldn't go out to see my friends, and I realized that I didn't get to actually have that last day of school for the last time of my high school career, and I didn't get to walk across the stage, what I've been waiting for, and I didn't get to dress up and go to prom and have my mom take photos and like have photos for memories for my future children. When that all came to me, it actually like impacted me in a way, whereas it was like, wow, this is something that is gonna like affect me for the rest of my life, because now when I talk to my children in the future, I'm gonna have to tell them, oh no, I didn't have a prom, but I know it's gonna be a great experience for yourself and whatnot. And myself personally, I'm a positive person, so I make sure like to not, I know about mental illness and depression and whatnot, and the ways to avoid it or what to do if I see myself coming in face with that challenge. So I've been able to stray away from that. However, I do have peers around me who have been impacted by depression, and they're letting it get to them and staying in their room closed out, not texting anyone, not talking to anyone, barely paying attention in the Zoom classes. And because of that, it also impacted me, because to see my friends go through that, it hurts me on the end, because I'm not actually able to be there with them physically to comfort them. And then if they're not texting anyone, then I can't even be there virtually for them. So like my advice for like youth, for you guys, if you have any young cousins, nieces, or nephews, or if you even know anyone who's in high school or a child in general, because my mom was telling me that like one of her friends, even her children who are in middle school, they're feeling a kind of way about this, because like imagine being in 5th grade and it's your first time thinking about graduation or like prom, and now you're not able to experience that for your first time. But if you guys know any teens or like kids around you, just make sure that you're by their side throughout this, no matter what, going in, checking in on their room. It's not about snooping or being nosy. It's about like, this is a time where we actually have to check in. And also for like the teens, I know that during this like pandemic, you're thinking, oh, everyone's home, so you have time to text me. Don't think about that. Having that mindset is narcissistic. You need to make sure, oh, okay, this person is not checking in with me, so let me check in with them, because this is a time where we should all unite and come together. Another thing that has impacted me is like eating. I'm putting myself on like a diet, not a diet, but like a 3-meal a day, because when you're in school, you just eat when you're in school and then you go home and eat. So like your meals aren't like imbalanced. But if I'm home all day, I'm gonna get bored, go in the fridge, snoop around, eat just cause. So I made sure to like do something for myself, whereas I strictly make sure that I only have 3 meals and I only have like 2 snacks. So like the snack could be after lunch or after dinner, or it could be after breakfast and then after lunch, or after breakfast, after lunch, so on. That's something that I'm doing for myself. And I think that could also be helpful for others, because you don't want to walk out of this pandemic extremely overweight, and you don't want to walk out of this pandemic extremely underweight, because both of those are 2 huge factors that can impact your health. And also another thing is that I know I'm an outside person, so it's like kind of hard for me to like be staying in the house during this pandemic. So sometimes I go to the store, because like that's my outside. But make sure when you're going outside, the mask, the gloves, and all of that. Stay safe and be safe. But for those of you who, for teens who are not like taking this as serious and saying, oh, this is just something we're gonna get past, I need you to like realize that this is not something that is just gonna go past, because although like I might not be impacted by coronavirus, I can be a carrier. And if I'm a carrier and I go home to my mom, I go home to my mom or grandparents, I can actually pass it on to them, and they can catch it, which could be very harmful in the end. Yeah. So for teens, just like realize that no, you might not catch coronavirus, but you can be a carrier and actually hurt someone else in the end. So my best advice is to stay home. And if you're not a at-home person, then what I do is sometimes I just wake up and I do my hair and just cause, and I put on clothes just cause, and make videos, because it makes me feel as if like I'm having a routine. Also, another problem that I see that a lot of teens are facing is that because we're not in school, we're actually getting a greater workload than when we were at school, because like, especially I go to charter schools, so what they're doing is they have us have work due at 12 p.m. and they have us have work due at 9 p.m. and it's like every day, and they post it at 6 a.m. and it feels like so much more work than when we're in school, because when you're in school, you're actually doing the classwork in class, rather than now we're at home. So we have the classwork and then the homework and regular exit tickets and whatnot. And at first, like myself and my peers, we were complaining about that, because it's like, why are the teachers assigning so much work? But I have bonds with teachers, so I spoke to them about it. And I didn't realize that they also have much more work on their plate from when they were working at school, because they still have much more to do. And it's not like their fault that they're assigning the work, because this is what the principal is telling them to do. So if you have any teens, just tell them that yes, the workload is a lot, but it's not only a lot for yourself. Your teachers are going through the same thing, and everyone is basically going through the same thing. It's all about how you handle it and what you do to make sure that you're in a safe space mentally, physically, and everything. And so my best advice for like teens is to make sure to check in Don't stray away. Don't think that, oh, that person could text you. No, you should put your pride aside and also go and text them. Also, stay from outside because you can be a carrier to those in your household, and we don't want any of that. And yes, make sure your eating is fine. No overeating, no undereating. Keep all of that intact. And if you're an outside person, then go to the store occasionally, but wear masks and gloves. And if your parents are not letting you out, then just get dressed up and make videos for Snapchat.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Malaysia.
You're welcome.
Christian Tabrone gave us a resource. City MD is now offering testing for anyone. So for the young people, like Malaysia said, who don't know where to go to get tested, City MD is offering free testing, which is a resource for those in the city. And those who may not be like Malaysia, who are suffering from food insecurity, like we said earlier, NAN is in partnership with World Central Kitchen. We have sites all over the nation that we're giving out food, and now we're also giving out masks. So that's a resource for you all if you need it. Marcus Bright, Dr. Marcus Bright is, I'm gonna unmute you. He is one of the directors, national directors for the 5,000 Role Models, which is, to me, one of the best youth groups for young men in the country. And he's had to deal with so many young people on the ground in Florida who's been impacted by not being in school and by this virus. And I wanted to know how you all are dealing with that in Florida, how you personally have been impacted. You're also a leader in the education field, so I wanted to know how that whole thing is being impacted, and if you can break it down for how the state is working, because I know Florida is also opening back up like Atlanta, and there's some pushback with that because we don't think that they're ready. So I wanted you to speak to that as well, Brother Marcus, Dr. Marcus Bright.
Thank you, Ashley, for having me, and thank you for convening and creating this platform for all of these young people and for the community to come together. For those of you all who don't know, the 5,000 Role Models was founded 26 years ago by Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, and I do believe that it's the nation's premier dropout prevention and mentorship program for boys of color. And it's set up, ironically, it's set up a lot like NAN, except it's based in a school system. So, for example, in Miami-Dade County Public Schools, we have chapters in 111 schools, grades elementary all the way to high school, 10,000 students. And so each of these schools have a chapter of like a ton of boys. It could be 50, some have 250, some have 150, and these boys receive mentorship. Every school is assigned mentors. They go on a ton of different field trips, a ton of different programming from health and wellness, police and youth relations, college prep, the whole 9 yards. It's the most holistic endeavor that I've been a part of, and I'm grateful for the vehicle that the Congresswoman has built and allowed me to be a part of. And I'm grateful because to be honest, I don't think that there's anyone in the country who's had the privilege of being able to be in contact with more young men on a day-to-day basis than I have, and I'm thankful for that. But with that being said, it's been a tremendous disruption in what we normally do. We normally have a ton of field trips and a ton of summits and conferences and all of that. All of that was halted. And so we really had to, try to shift and adapt to this new normal and using different modes of technology to try to stay in contact with these young men, because they still have the same needs. They still need guidance. They still need support. They still need mentorship. They're adapting to a wide-ranging change and not only in the environment with COVID-19, but the Miami area has been significantly, and I think that we'll see the impact of that in the coming months, significantly hit from an economic standpoint. You're talking about an international tourist destination, and I never thought I'd see the day when all the hotels on South Beach would be closed. Miami Beach is closed. Huge cruise ship Carnival, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian shut down. All the hotels shut down. Massive layoffs, massive furloughs. And then you have an unemployment system that is very, very slow in Florida, where I saw an article where upwards of 80% of applicants have not received benefits. So people don't know where their next dollar is going to come from. So we're just trying to do what we can to stand in the gap. And, at the beginning of this year, I said to myself, I said, I don't want to be, because I spent my second year at the role models. I said, I spent the first year mostly a lot of times in the office, trying to plan events and that kind of thing. I said, I'm gonna do that from the road this year, because I want to be able to get out and meet as many young men as I can. So I may be 3, 4, 5 schools a day. And I'm glad that it happened now, because now when you're only relying on text messages, calls, Zoom, it's a difference between somebody reaching out to you and they know you, and then versus somebody reaching out to you and say, who is this? Man, go on somewhere. Because a lot of our young people, they don't have trust and they don't have guidance. But if you can gain their trust, they'll accept your guidance. And so it's incumbent upon us. And I'm grateful for organizations like National Action Network. Because, and I've always said that the strength of NAN, the strength is on the ground, is in the chapters. Mm-hmm. If you take away every event, you can't do no more conferences, no more panels, no more dinners, no more of that. If you can still have an impactful organization, if you have a network of people who are committed on the ground. And I'm thankful for the investment that we made in our site directors. All of these chapters have site directors, mm-hmm. and have student leadership. And we made a tremendous investment in them. And we're relying on that now to still try to serve the needs, particularly with those who are transitioning and we're in 34 high schools, and so many of those seniors need advice, need guidance. It's reaching out to them in terms of their next step, trying to create a lot of opportunities, trying to plan ahead for the summer even. And a lot of the summer partnerships that were going to be in person are now going to be virtual, trying to open up more spots for that and just trying to anticipate the need. Now, when it comes to education overall, we know now that states are going to lose a ton of revenue. I just saw here in Florida, in the Orlando area, Disney laid off 100,000 people. You're going to have tremendous losses in revenue in all states. And it's going to call for significant budget cuts at the state level, at the local level. And often the first thing to get cut is going to be education. And so we have to be in the ears of our legislators, whatever you can now, and let them know that you cannot balance the budgets on the backs of our children. We have to be advocates for our children. And lastly, I think that this is a time, as Mr. McMillan said, to have an attitude of gratitude, because this is a time of unprecedented challenge, but it's also a time of unprecedented opportunity. And it's a time that we can self-reflect and retool ourselves, retool our organizations, invest in the technology, and truly, truly appreciate the time and the opportunity that we have to spend with our loved ones. I know that I may never again in life have this kind of uninterrupted, extended time with my son, with my wife, and I don't take it for granted. My parents just moved down here to South Florida. For many years, I only saw them a couple times a year. I'm able to spend a lot of time with them. And so let us not take this time for granted, and this opportunity to reconnect with those that are close, maximize this time, and just let everybody know how valuable they are. Let our young people know that they're valuable, that they're important, that they're appreciated, and that we believe in them, and just do all that we can, through whatever avenue that we have, to try to uplift each other. And I'll just end on this. A gentleman who went by the name of Monk, I thought about when he passed a few weeks ago, I think. And I always remember when I got my PhD in 2014, I thought I'd done something. And it was on a Friday. I defended my dissertation, and we flew up to New York. Long story behind that, but we got there. And, the Reverend announced that he was like, hey, Dr. Bright got a PhD. And Monk, and for those of you who don't know, Monk is a guy who, he presented himself like a homeless person, but he had tremendous wisdom, right? Tremendous wisdom. And he said this, and I think about this every single day. He said, you got your PhD. That's good. He said, but what you gonna do with it? Not for you. What you gonna do with it for your people, for your community? What you gonna do with it? So I think that that's a question that we should all ask ourselves the ability, the opportunity, the platform that God has given us. What you gonna do with it?
Thank you, brother. Thank you. All right, Marcus Bright. Thank you, sir. Okay. There's been a bunch of questions on the line, but I want to start with this, and anyone can take it. We got some extra time. We ended a little early with the speakers, which is great. But Mary Pat, I think, spoke to it. I think William spoke to it. The census and voting during this time. Everybody is wrapped in Corona. Everybody is wrapped in COVID, fear, and the economy. Why is it important to continue to stress the census and voting during this time, or how are we doing that on the ground? Anyone can take this. Any speaker? Sally? All right, got you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So like I said, I work in our Washington, D.C. office where we interact with tons of lawmakers and policy people on a daily basis. Sometimes we got to, shake them up because they be a little crazy sometimes to do what we need them to do. But it's very important when it comes to census and voting. In regards to census, there's tens and thousands of dollars on the line for our communities to be funded. And as Dr. Bright has said, we don't need to balance our budgets on the backs of our children. So we definitely need to ensure that children are accounted for, making sure that you're registered to vote. There's power that lies within the census. There's power that lies in your right to vote. And it's very important that we get the word out for folks to fill out their census. Like, people are sitting in their homes right now. This is the perfect time to meet folks where they're at. So go online, and it takes a quick second. Census is online. You can call by phone. You can send it to the mail. All type of ways. There's really no excuse for folks not to get engaged, especially during this time when we're sitting at home. To go ahead and fill out the census.
Perfect. Reverend Marshall?
I think what Talik said was the nail on the head. I just want to make it as simple as possible for people that we already know the current situation as it relates to economics in our community by way of not having testing and the resources that we need for our folks to really overcome this. And so it's really simple. They're both interconnected. If the more people we get counted, obviously the funding will become available, and so our people can recover. We have to understand that after Corona is declared no longer a pandemic, the epidemics in our community are still going to exist. And I don't know if we're going to have closing remarks, so I'll take the liberty now to say it. We don't understand the fact that poverty breeds violence, right? And so we're poor already, we're underserved, we're unhealthy. And so now we're seeing, just a few minutes ago, I got a text that there was a shooting in the East New York section of Brooklyn. This is like the fourth shooting around this whole epidemic in the last week. So we have to understand that this is not only going to be impactful or impacted our people based on our health disparity, but we're going to have some real challenges with a community that's already poor. What are we going to tell somebody that's hungry? They're going to go get what they need to get from whoever they need to get it from. So the census and voting is interconnected by way of resources being allocated appropriately to our communities, and no other community is in greater need than ours. I look at numbers all the time. We do have some astronomical numbers as it relates to deaths and people infected by this disease. We also have astronomical numbers around the amount of shootings that are happening in our communities today. And so while there's a new pandemic on the horizon around the country and around the world called the coronavirus, we've already been suffering from an epidemic called violence in our communities everywhere. And they're all interconnected. There's no way, again, I want to reiterate that that JoJo that doesn't have money and his parents don't have money because they've been laid off, furloughed, or previously unemployed prior to this, and the conditions are worse, that he's not going to go do what he has to do to make sure he can provide for himself, at minimum to make sure he can eat and wash his clothes. Like, it's really that serious now. We're in a time where to go along to get along is no longer the norm, and we are in survival mode. And our communities, again, are the poorest, and we are there. The streets will rise up and go to what they know, not by choice always, by pure desperation. And we need to make sure we keep that on the forefront as well, to make sure we're funding our communities by way of the census and voting.
Amen. speaking about voting, someone asked how do we feel about Trump telling us to put cleaning products in our lungs? I feel that that's asinine. I don't know if anyone wants to take that specifically. I just feel like Trump, he's a distraction. That was completely ludicrous. As the president in chief, I don't even feel like that should be even entertained. And that was just bothersome. He said he was joking about it. It's a distraction. We need to vote him out. That's my personal opinion. He needs to be voted out at this time. I don't feel like this virus would have been a pandemic if it would have been handled properly from the top down. So that's related to Trump. Like I said, I don't know if any of the other speakers want to take that, but I just had to address that question because it was put into the chat about him telling us to inject disinfectant into our lungs, into ourselves, which is absolutely asinine. Is there a National Action Network chapter in Delaware or nearby? Dominique, membership director. Is there a National Action Network chapter in Delaware?
Yeah, I can send the information to you now.
Okay, you can put it in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you. Julian Hemmings, we have a concern for USG students. Julian, are you here? Julian? Is he here? Okay, I don't see Julian. Naomi Jones asks, what ways can one take care of themselves medically if you feel sick at this time during the pandemic? Recommendations, please. Stephen?
Sure. So obviously hospitals are clusters for disease more so than ever. Hospital systems are really bombarded. But I would also suggest that you don't ignore what your body is telling you. And so we have a fear component in our communities where we don't want to go to hospitals. You have a whole bunch of information about home remedies that haven't been proven. People are, taking substances that they heard works and whatever. And that may be true. I'm not against holistic healing or remedies, but our body is a clear communicator, even when we're not. And so when something is, subsides in your body and your gut tells you that it's something that's not normal, then you have to go make a decision. Me personally, I had some symptoms that I thought was related to COVID, which thank God it wasn't. But my choice was to go to urgent care where I felt that the population of people were less in acute than the hospital. If you go to the emergency room, obviously, especially in our communities, pre-corona, you're going to register and be there for 4, 5, 6 hours. Do you want to sit in a place where there's a cluster of folks that are undiagnosed? I don't think that's the smartest thing to do, but definitely find an urgent care or an institution with less traffic. And the only problem with that in our community, again, to go back to how much we're underserved, is that so many people in our community are uninsured. So you can't just go to CityMD and say, I want a COVID test. You can if you have the economics and the resources to do it, because you can pay out of pocket. But again, going back to our disproportionate disadvantages in our community on all levels, all spectrums, you can talk about anything from food to economics, we're last. And so, but again, to her question, not to go off topic, that you should listen to your body. You shouldn't have a headache for 3 days and say, you've taken 6 Motrins and nothing worked. You're gonna have to go get evaluated. The biggest thing for us is to overcome the fear of, if I walk into an institution, am I gonna become infected? The misnomer is that you may already are. So what do you have to lose, but what do you have to gain from really being proactive?
Thank you. This was also a question to anyone. Van Jones recently received backlash for making comments that Black people must change their lifestyles. Do you guys feel that he's onto something, or were his comments out of bounds? Anyone want to take that? Word?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Word. You're unmuted.
Hi, good day. God bless you all. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm glad that everyone else. Yeah, hi. Brother Van Jones, he's obviously concerned with his people, Black people. And he also knows that the coronavirus seriously strikes some individuals who have pre-existing health problems. So I believe he's only saying it from that perspective. And if that's really clearly understood, people should really appreciate his concern.
Thank you, Word. Bria, I saw your hand. You want to address that?
I was just going to touch on what we discussed earlier. So as far as us changing our
Hello? Bria?
I'm here.
Okay, there we go.
You got?
Yeah, you go.
I was just saying, like what we talked about earlier, just more of that mental health awareness in our community and really addressing mental illness and allowing people to feel comfortable and sharing it. I know there's a lot of people in some of my circles where mental health is like a scary topic and you don't want to discuss it, or just some families. I know that I don't want to bash my mom, but sometimes if I'm like having a bad day and she comes in, she's like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, can I just have a bad day? I'm not depressed. I'm not going through anything. I just need the safety and the agency to feel. And I think that we have to do a better job at doing that in our community and just allowing people to feel what they're feeling, but also addressing things head on when it comes to mental health. So that's one thing I think we need to really work on in our community.
Excellent. Minister Marshall?
I think going to a question about Van Jones, I think it's, for lack of a better word, a disgrace that we can really hone in on his comments and may or may have not taken it out of context. But going back to your point about the president of the free world referring to disinfectants as a remedy to rid the virus. First, I think we are probably the most critical of ourselves, and we probably need to do some research about the person's character before we make an assumption that they were saying something that was out of bounds. In retrospect, I do believe his comment could have been more polished. Obviously we speak sometimes out of emotion and concern, and we may come off to be offensive. But going back to my opening statement about disproportionate disparities, it's easy for someone to say you need to stay in your house or change your eating habits when nothing else is available to you but a Chinese restaurant and a Crown Fried Chicken everywhere you go. It's easy for you to say we got to change our habits. Obviously, from our ancestors, our eating habits were not what they should be. But the difference is that back then they were eating for survival. There's no difference in today. Where if our weekly check is $500 a week and after our bills are paid we have $100 left, we're gonna go get a 2 for $4 at Wendy's. That's just the bottom line. And so overall, I think it's inspirational to say we need to change our habits, but let's be literal. People have no options and no choices when it comes to food selection. If you live in places like East New York or the South Bronx, or even in Harlem, where they've put all these cafes and even Whole Foods, which is a great entity. But how many people live on 145th and Lenox can afford to go to Whole Foods?
True. So. That's true. I agree. I just want to add before I take the next questions and comments. I think, like Steven said, I agree that Van Jones, the statements could have been a little more polished. But at the end of the day, there are some conditions that we have that we can make some changes with. For me personally, I can speak for myself. Obesity. I'm overweight. I've been overweight for a long time, and I chose this time in quarantine to start working out. And it's my 14th day today, and as baby steps, little steps. But I mean, it's encouraging. It makes me feel better. And it was scary seeing on TV the conditions and they're saying, oh, obesity, diabetes, asthma. I have diabetes, so I mean, you may be offended, but it's real. It's the fact. And if you want to change that, if you want to save your life, you can. You're the only person who can. You can take this time and take the reins, and you can start working out, and you can start eating better. Even if you're in a community with bad food, you can go to the Chinese restaurant and choose a better option than getting a whole fattening meal. So there's little things that we can do. Marcus, I know he's on here. He works out every day. Teresa Weatherspoon is on here. She's always been encouraging me to work out, but just to be a little healthier. We have a NAN health challenge. Kyra, I don't know if she's still on, but we're currently doing the RAS challenge to work out every day. So it is okay. I know Van Jones might have said it wrong, but it is important to care about yourself and to care about your health and your life. And it's sad that it took the coronavirus to scare me into working out, but at the end of the day, I can say it's something positive that has come from this time. Dr. Bright?
Yeah, I'll just say, if you all, I don't know who has been watching The Last Dance on ESPN, chronicling the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan, but last night's episode I think provided a lesson for us, at least one that I took, and that is for 3 consecutive years, my brother Isaiah Thomas and the Pistons busted Jordan's head and knocked him out the playoffs every single year. And that last year that Isaiah and the Pistons beat Jordan, Jordan was so crushed that his dad had to get on the bus and ride to the plane with him. Knocked him out, knocked Jordan out. The next day, Jordan was back in the gym and used the time to self-reflect and said, there's something in me that I have to change. I can't win it by myself. I have to empower my teammates. I have to go lift weights. I have to go retool my body, be more of a team player, make adjustments and retool myself. And that and in the next year, they knocked Isaiah out and went on to win three straight championships. So let us use this time as a time we've been knocked out to retool ourselves, to look and examine opportunities that we may have missed with this additional time that we have to reflect. Reverend Sharpton said something on the call last night. He said, check to make sure that the people in your house are registered. And I said, man, as I'm on these Zoom calls with all these boys and that kind of thing, I said, hey, I need to be saying, hey, go in there and see if your mama registered to vote.
That's right.
This is the biggest, Miami-Dade County, the biggest county and the biggest swing state in America. We could win it. We could change the election right there.
That's right.
Just with this little footprint and this little structure, you could reach, tens of thousands of people and potentially swing an election just in terms of turnout. So let's look at the stones that we aren't using. Examine the opportunities that we're missing and seize those opportunities. Use this time. We can't stay on the mat forever. We was on the mat a couple weeks. We was on the mat. We got to get off the mat now.
That's right.
And like Jordan, get back in the gym.
Thank you, sir. There was another question. I see hands. I'm going to come to you, but I just wanted to throw this out there. Velma Joseph said, why is the world mute on what China is doing to Black people? So I wanted to go to Tyleek because I know you're good with campaigns as far as social media. Should we be starting a campaign to boycott China, stay out of China? What should we be doing about that?
Oh, okay. Okay. One more time, you said, I'm sorry.
Basically what's going on in China, they were basically saying that Black people were responsible of bringing the coronavirus. So McDonald's in China was banning Black people.
Yeah, so I think I did see that briefly on Twitter, but I think in any instance, it's always our right and our moral obligation to speak truth to power, and to speak up and do what's right. I mean, like I said, we live in a digital time. I mean, everything's connected on Twitter. I mean, everybody from all over the world can see what folks are talking about. And I definitely see the conversation was happening. But I definitely believe that we should definitely speak truth to power of what's going on. And I think, especially in a time as this, in our country, in a very divisive time, in a very divisive president, as minorities and as people of color, in particular, we all have been, in this country, have been targeted. So for a time, for us, for minorities in general to turn against each other, or for it to be a group of minorities against another, I think that shouldn't happen. And I think, especially as a time as this, it's a time for us to rally together and to stand together, to speak truth to power and just to stand up for one another. So,
thank you, Doc. Patrice, you had a question?
No, I wanted to respond to your the comment about Van Jones, how he should have been polished.
Go ahead.
I don't think he should have been polished. I think the reality is life will never be the same for any of us. So he shouldn't have polished a comment. That's reality. It's never going to be the same, whether we Black, white, gray, whatever. Even the biggest billionaire, it has to sit in his house right now because of Corona. So no, I don't think his comments absolutely should not have been polished. He spoke truth to power.
But do you agree with what he said as far as Black people making lifestyle changes?
Absolutely. And it's not just Black people, though. A lot of us lifestyles are changing.
Good.
Because of this. Absolutely.
All right. Julian, are you here with us?
I am.
All right. I know you had an issue
You
that
hear
you
me?
wanted to raise. Go ahead, Doc.
Oh, yes, I do. Okay, perfect. There's a young lady, New Democrats are in here, and then a young lady from University of Georgia Sierra Thomas I think she's here as well. So the issue that I wanted to raise is this, right? So Morehouse students, New Deal Democrats, SGA, and faculty all came together to do a pass-fail initiative as a result of the coronavirus, right? And we got it accomplished. However, schools all across Georgia have a big issue. Public institutions are denying students the ability to take a pass-fail. Instead, they're pretending as if students are not out of school and they're giving them regular letter grades. And the reason why they're saying that, despite students going to Fox News, despite students writing letters to their congressman, making calls, they've been denied this because of something called the Hope Scholarship, saying that if they do a pass-fail initiative, then the students will lose their particular Hope Scholarship. Also, I know it's really, really dark. And also, I think Sierra Thomas can add more detail to it than I can if she's still on the line. Sierra Thomas?
She's still here. Sierra? I'm muted. Go ahead.
Hey, y'all.
Hello.
My name is Sierra Thomas. I'm one of the organizers for USG Students for Grade Reform. I go to the University of Georgia. We're a student-led coalition, and like Julian said, we're advocating for equitable grade reform in light of the pandemic. For a little bit of background, all 26 public colleges and universities in Georgia are governed by the University System of Georgia, which is a body, and they released a statement about 3 weeks ago now that essentially bans all public institutions in the state from implementing any type of pass-fail system. And these types of systems have been implemented by over 150 universities across the country. Out of all 150 of the top public institutions in the US, only 4 have not adopted some type of equitable grade reform, and 3 of those 4 are in Georgia under the direction of USG and are like not allowed to make any type of change. And this is something we're really pushing for because we think it's an issue of ethics, not an issue of politics or academic policy. This is disproportionately affecting students from rural areas or from marginalized or underprivileged communities. And we've heard from over 2,000 students now. And there are students who can't keep up with their grades because it takes them 8 hours to download a lecture video. There are students who are at risk of losing their visas. There are students who are we have heard from one student who has one family member with cancer and one with coronavirus, and she's trying to take care of both of them and take care of all of her classes. We have students like Dominique who are student parents, and they're trying to take care of their children and teach their kids and also maintain all of their classes. And so far, USG has just been really adamant in their standing. We've had news clips posted in Fox 5 News in Atlanta, out of multiple stations in Savannah, out of Inside Higher Education, which is a national publication that talks about education policies. And they're really just sticking with their statement. They're sticking with their guns, saying they're not going to make any type of change. And we essentially are here advocating for what we think is right and fighting to put the voices of students first, because we think it's what the university system should be doing, and they're not.
Marcus, can you speak to this if you don't mind? No, Marcus?
Yeah, I can speak to it.
Hello, Marcel. Hello, Fufi.
I would be interested. Hey.
Sorry, go ahead.
You don't want to, but I would be interested to see, have you all received any pushback, or would you say that the majority of students want that? Or
the majority. So I'm sorry, but Sierra actually, Sierra and other students have collaborated with the Student Democrats, Student Republicans. It's been a big coalition of students. Actually, there's another video about this issue with students from all creeds, all colors talking about it. It has 40,000, I think 90,000 views on Twitter. So it's an extremely popular measure by the students. A lot of the faculty members believe in this, but don't want to sign the petition because they're afraid that they're going to lose their jobs. So everyone's in favor of this. It's just the USG Regents board that's trying to deny them. C.A. Thomas can add more to it, to what I'm saying.
Khalik, I saw your hand up.
Sierra?
Well, yeah, I was wondering. So I know I went to school at North Carolina A&T, and we are also under the same jurisdiction when it comes to states and the UNC system as well. I was wondering, do you have a student representative that sits on the general board for the school? Because like you said, it is a very serious matter when it comes to broadband, when it comes to like opportunity to like internet essentials and stuff like that. So I definitely understand. Yeah.
So the thing about what I'm doing, so at Morehouse we already achieved it. So the thing about what Sierra's talking about as a student in the public school institution at Georgia is that they've had students from SGA all across the boards get involved, talk to them about these issues, but they are denying students' voices. They're saying, irrespective of your opinion, irrespective of your voice, irrespective of the issues, irrespective of mental health crises. I lost 5 family members to the coronavirus.
That's crazy.
So, but if Morehouse didn't pass the pass-fail measure, I'd probably be failing Morehouse right now. I'd probably be going through a massive issue. They're not supporting the students. We everyone to come together and work on this particular thing. That's why I felt like being here was so important.
Thank you. Well, I don't want to cut you all off, but I want to have this conversation. Julian and Sierra and Tyleek, maybe we can, and Marcus, maybe we can do this during the week, have our separate conference call about this issue and talk about it next Monday, if possible, and see how we can work together to support each other on this, if that's okay.
I would love that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love that.
Okay, so we're gonna do that. So Julian, I'm gonna follow up with you as soon as we get off of this. Okay. Okay. There was a few more questions. We got a few more minutes, and then I want to go off. Christian Tabron asked a great question. How are we going to be different coming out of this pandemic in regards to teaching the youth the importance of financial literacy, as finances are one of the underlying causes of the massive effects of this virus and other issues? Anybody want to take that?
Can we hear from Teresa? Is she still on?
Yeah, she's on. She's talking to somebody right now, but anyone want to address this question from Christian Tabron, and then I'm going to go to Teresa? Word, I see your hand up. Look at baby. I see you, baby Justice. Stephen.
Oh my gosh.
She's 2 days old, guys. Sorry.
2 days old.
Yeah.
Anyone want to address
Huddle Zoom?
Yes, that's our youngest Huddle member and NAN member.
She wanted to talk, but she took too long.
Sorry. Okay, back to the question. Sorry, Word. Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you. The financial literacy, the first thing I thought about, and I had thought about this while the other speaker was speaking about the census, participating in the census and voting. I think that's a very significant part of financial literacy, because when I think of census, I think of this is the opportunity for us to get more money, more financial resources. When I think of voting, it's an opportunity to get representation to make sure we get the funding, the money that we do need in our communities. So I think students need to understand participating in the so-called political process is a very important part of financial literacy. And then now to make it more on a personal level, that we have to basically consider spending our money more wisely. I know there's a lot of things, a lot of wants, but we have to really focus on what we can use our money in terms of buying what we need, participating in services that we need. So I think that's a very important part of financial literacy as well. In terms of food, we have to spend our money on more nutritious food. That's a part of financial literacy. Also, being a contributor to the household, even if it's just a few dollars, to help the person who pays the rent, give them a few dollars, $1 or $2 for a young student who doesn't get that much money, but just chip in. So that's also a way of supporting one's own household by contributing whatever they can possibly contribute. The smallest amount, whatever, will also be important. That's a part of financial literacy as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Word. Minister Marshall? Your hand is
I'm
up?
good.
Oh,
No,
I'm sorry.
I'm good.
Okay. There was another question from one of our Huddle parents. Good evening, Huddle family. This is Miss Pam, and I would like to touch on the issue of men of color having to wear a mask because it is the law, even though they may be discriminated against, while other people can protest freely and not be penalized. Anyone want to take this? That's basically to the over-policing of Black people. Anyone want to take it? Ocean?
I do. Hey, yeah, sorry, earlier I had a little sister problem and she was crazy. But hey, I would say, yeah, because already Black men are being discriminated against because, like, you know, like when they have like a burglar mask on, and like, you know how, like, you know, they'll assume that they're gonna steal something because they're wearing a mask and stuff like that, and they can't, and they'd be like, oh, they're gonna, like, you know, like rob the store and stuff like that, and how they think that they're gonna, you know, do something bad because that's automatically like stereotyping like, you know, African American men. And I think, like, you know, that's wrong because, you know, anybody could commit a crime while wearing a mask.
That's true. That's true. Anyone else want to speak to it? I personally feel like because it is going to be an issue that there's always someone trying to bother us. Like we talked about earlier, in Harlem, there's people still on the corner convening, and half of them don't have masks. I feel like that's an invitation for police to bother you. I know that it's not fair what happens in our community, but I feel that we should make sure that we are protecting ourselves. It's the law right now. It was made the law. It was mandated in New York City by Cuomo that everyone needs a mask. Our communities are over policed and they're over aggressive in the policing. So at the end of the day, don't invite them to bother you. Use your mask. And yes, we've seen protesters with guns, with using racial flags and signs and swastikas on their things and not wearing masks. I called that a Trump rally, like Rev said on MSNBC the other day. But at the end of the day, they're not going to be held accountable like we are. And we know that. So why test it? Why even go and dare people to bother you? Use your mask, use your gloves. And not just because you were told so, but to protect yourself. This is a virus. This virus is real. It's not a hoax. We can catch it. We have seen people that have died. People are dying daily. There's new cases daily. And yes, in China where it started, now it's gone. But right now we're in the middle of it. So it is just wise, like everyone has said, I'm gonna say it again, use your mask, wear your gloves, practice social distancing. Anyone else want to add?
You're muted.
Are there any more questions? I see, Patrice, you have your hand up still? You have a question?
I just want to add one thing. When you talked about the mask and the gloves is important as to where you throw them out too, because the virus can land on just one of the fingers of the glove. It can still be on that glove when you throw it out.
That's right.
So make sure you try to throw those out into a recyclable bin. Don't just throw them on the floor, just throw them in your regular garbage. The disease lives on gloves also.
You should actually turn your gloves inside out when you throw them away so that it's inside. And you should also change them because they cross-contaminate. So if you're on a train or you're on a bus and then you go into your house, you should take those gloves off because now you're taking the germs that was just on the train or the bus into your house. Just letting you know. Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to add? Kyra? Teresa? Any words of encouragement during this time? Mims?
Is she muted?
I don't, they have to. Kyra? No? Okay.
Sorry, my dog was barking. Yeah, I guess words of encouragement, I would just say, like, echo a lot of what was said on the call. Staying connected, being physically distant and safe doesn't necessarily mean being socially distant. So just checking on people you love. Sorry, my doctor wrote me a prescription for a dog to get me through this, and she wants to play, but I'll leave y'all with that. I see other animals. Hi, animals.
Yeah. Ocean is holding her cat. Okay, Patrice, one more time. I see your hand.
And everyone on the call that God is sovereign. Continue to pray to him and trust him that we're going to get through this. We just got to have faith and be strong and continue to pray. And everything that you see and all the news can get you discouraged, but have faith and know that, you know, God got us. That's it.
Amen. Naomi Jones?
Yeah, I just wanted to say in this time of pandemic, it makes everything worse. But especially the digital divide, we're all very fortunate to be able to have access and be able to communicate, which I miss y'all. I'm glad to be able to do this. Normally, I don't even show me or myself in those meetings. I had that picture up, but I really wanted to connect with you guys. But this is a blessing. A lot of people don't have that blessing, and we got to look out for each other in any way we can. I emailed you a resource that might be able to help out with that as far as the digital divide for students that are in school that might need some help. So check it out, and God bless you, everybody.
Thank you. I'm gonna check it out and blast it. Thank you, Naomi. Julian, see your hand?
Yeah, so I just wanted to tell everyone to stay optimistic and to make sure that if you guys have a problem, like, we can all stay together, we can all stay organizing. I don't want to send out my number to actually a lot of people.
Okay, go ahead.
So my phone number is 646-510-0176. And I wanted to tell, you know, oh, put in the chat. And I want to tell Malaysia, congratulations for getting into Clark, Atlanta. Some of my best friends come from Clark. I think that they don't know what they got, man. They don't know what they just got.
Yeah.
Because you know, I'm not there, Mary Pat's not there. So who's gonna take up the tradition of NAN students make a difference in the AEC? And I can't imagine anyone better than Malaysia. So we're real excited to have you. And if you have any questions, call me and I can walk you through anything you need.
Thank you.
I wanted to give a shout out to Minister Winston Gilchrist, who's on. His birthday was, I think it was, is it today?
Happy birthday, Winston.
Today. I thought it was today.
He's been our videographer for over decades. And he's always on the front lines, and we love you.
Thank you for being
the GOAT forever.
Teresa, I think, is gone. She left us, but we salute to you, Teresa Weatherspoon. We want you to say some words. But first, I just want to say, or lastly, I just want to say thank you to all of our speakers today. I wanted one of our ministers to pray us off, if that was okay. Hold on, David Mims, I see. Wait.
Hey.
David, go ahead. We have 4 minutes. Go ahead. Go ahead. You're unmuted. I can't hear you, though. We can't hear you. Maybe the headphones? I don't know. Okay. Julian, one more? Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was by accident.
Your hand was up. Yeah, your hand was up.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so we're gonna pray us out. Next week is the National Action Network is having a Faith in Action on Facebook Live with Reverend Sharpton, Jamal Bryant, Rudolph McKissick, and Mrs. Warren.
Teacher Warren.
And it's another pastor. His name's sticking me for the moment, but they go live at 7:30 next week. So we might have an hour, and then we're gonna all go and listen to them and pay our respects to our leadership and listen to what they're talking about. Faith in Action during this time is very important. But we want to thank everybody that was on with us this evening for our first ever virtual huddle. Thank you to all of our speakers. And I'm going to send out the information so that you can follow them. They are all important in doing important work during this time, and not just during this time, but period, on the front lines for social justice. So we just want to thank you all for listening to us, supporting us, and following us. And if there's more information that you need us to share, you can email nanyouthhuddle@gmail.com, and you also can keep up with us at nationalactionnetwork.net. We love you all, and we thank you, and we encourage you to stay safe during this time. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to end the meeting. Anyone else want to say anything? I'm unmuting everyone.
Goldie Heart.
Make sure y'all leave at 2026 and you vote.
Congratulations.
Bye,
everyone.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Bye. Hi, Goldie.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi, Ashley. Really nice.
Hi, John Boy.
Yes.
All right, I'm ending it.
Bye, Ashley.
Bye, y'all.
Good. God loves everybody.
Yes, he does.
And God bless everybody in Christ Jesus.
All right, word.